Deep in the untamed wilderness of Washington lie two forgotten sentinels of the forests. Although dwarfed in size by the nearby Mount St. Helens, they once played a pinnacle role in guarding these lands. For decades, their summits were crowned with fire lookout towers, until time left them to decay. Today, I'm climbing these peaks not only to search for what remains of their past, but to relive it. And when the day is done, I'll be sleeping on the summit, keeping vigil through the night, as the watchmen once did. But before I can reach the summit, I first have to face the miles of trail that stand between me and the ridgeline. There are several pathways to reach the summit of Siouxon Peak. The easiest and most obvious way would be to start at the high ridgeline at the junction of the old road, making for a gradual 2.2-mile climb to reach the summit. Unfortunately, that would mean missing out on my favorite form of self-torture, schlepping a heavy pack plus a bunch of water, the equivalent height of the Empire State Building. Just kidding. That's only the extra elevation from the creek up to the road. I'm actually going to be hiking almost 4.5 Empire State Buildings. If there's anything I've learned over the years, it's that sometimes the long path is the more rewarding one. There's something special about the feeling you get when you reach the end of a journey and can trace every step of the distance you traveled to get there. It's that very sentiment that draws me into the woods, chasing the satisfaction that only comes from earning it the hard way. So in the spirit of difficult challenges, I set out earlier this summer to scale these peaks for the bottom of the valley. I first tried via the recently abandoned Wildcat Trail. I was hoping that the area of blowdown would blow over, so to speak. Would you f*** off, Mr. Fly? Get out! Although the flies and fallen timber had thwarted my efforts, I felt a fierce fire within to return and finish what I began. Finally time to get this show on the road. We got about a 600-foot descent down to the creek, and then a slow, gradual 1,000-foot-ish climb as we work our way up to the junction to the massive giant climb. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. As the trail meanders its way towards the Siouxon Creek, I encountered areas of both lush vegetation in the old-growth forest, as well as sections of burn scar that have been affected by the 2020 Big Hollow fire. I started getting a bit nervous as I approached the junction for the creek crossing adjacent to the Wildcat Trail. I was hopeful that this time around, the other side of the creek would be a bit more promising. Unfortunately, it looks like this trail is not in good condition. I'm really hoping that the upper section, past where the old bridge was, will be in better shape, because supposedly it is, according to a report I saw on the website, but this is clearly not good. So I'm gonna go back across and take the other trail and then
I'm gonna have to ford the creek in the area where that old bridge was. I made it across the creek again. Now I'm like in this, quote, dispersed camping area. So I'm gonna be searching for some sort of trail and try to find Chinook Falls. I might have to ford Chinook Creek, but supposedly there should be more of a trail. So we'll see, but gonna have to start looking. Now is going to be the beginning of the massive climb, and there's not going to be any water at all until I get back to Siouxson Creek tomorrow. So I'm going to be loading up with a ton of water, liters upon liters upon liters, which is going to be really fucking heavy, but so it is.
As I ascended the many switchbacks and climbed into the heart of the night, the summit remained hours away. In that darkness, I began to think about fire, its destruction, its legacy, and the towers that rose in its wake. The story takes us back to the spring of 1910. Freak early season fires initially broke out in April in Colorado. Over the next 2 months, severe drought plagued the region, and multiple small fires started erupting everywhere. On July 26th, a thunderstorm rolled through the region. It unleashed lightning that lit up the forest and set hundreds of fires ablaze. The final ingredient for disaster was the wind. On August 20th, a cold front swept across the northwest. This created the atmospheric conditions for what they call a pollucer, a violent gale of wind originating from the southeast corner of Washington. With gusts up to 70 miles per hour, it tore across the mountains and valleys, fusing the scattered blazes into one massive conflagration. There was little that the firefighters could do to stop the spread. The blaze swept through with a terrible hunger, leaving only ruin in its wake. Homesteads vanished, entire communities disappeared overnight, and even larger towns were left scarred. In 48 hours, the fire consumed nearly 3 million acres. 86 people lost their lives, most of them the very men who stood against it. Among the survivors was a man named Ed Pulaski. When the firestorm closed in, he led 45 men into an abandoned mine shaft and held them there throughout the night, saving nearly every one of their lives. Pulaski emerged scarred but resolute. He became a forest ranger and later designed the tool that bears his name, the Pulaski axe. Half mattock, half axe, forged for fighting fire. From these ashes of tragedy came a new resolve. Pulaski's story became a symbol of the struggle and helped spark a movement that vastly expanded the nation's firefighting efforts. Out of devastation, a new era of stewardship was born. The government started building thousands of lookout towers at nearly every vista point they could find. Their goal was total and complete eradication of fire. This momentum was further fueled during the 1930s by FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps, who would first build trails and then carry up the lumber log by log to construct the towers on the remote summits. From these efforts rose the earliest designs, the simple cupola design, like the ones first built on Siouxson Peak. Later, they evolved into a standardized L4 style, sometimes perched on tall stilts to command even wider views. The watchmen would live and work on the summit around the clock, scanning the horizon for the faintest wisp of smoke. In the center of the cabin sat a circular instrument called the Osborne Firefinder, which is essentially a map laid flat out on a table. This was equipped with a 360-degree compass, as well as rotating sighting bars. A lookout could swing the sights across the landscape, line them up with the smoke, and then call in that bearing. When combined with reports from other towers, dispatchers could triangulate a fire's exact location with remarkable accuracy. By the 1940s, the effort had grown beyond the towers themselves. The Forest Service expanded into public education, creating campaigns like Smokey the Bear to help teach citizens that preventing wildfires was everyone's responsibility. At its peak, there were an estimated 654 towers scattered across Washington state alone. But nothing could last forever. Fall down. Good morning from Siouxson Peak. Feeling much better this morning. Last night was pretty bad. Obviously, I ran out of sunlight, and so I had to hike with the headlamp. So I didn't ultimately get to camp until 10:20. Then I woke up pretty early to catch the sunrise, and I gotta say it's been worth it. When you wake up in such a beautiful place like this, definitely I think has given me a little bit of a perspective on what the folks were feeling when they could see what I'm seeing. They could spot a fire. They could definitely spot one from pretty far away, but more importantly, they just got treated to some absolutely spectacular sunrises. I'm sure the sunset was also good. Unfortunately, I missed that. I wanted to be here for that, but it just takes a lot of time to film, and gotta get the shots. So now we're gonna eat some breakfast and kind of explore the summit a bit, check out any remnants left over from the tower, stuff like that. Do a little reflecting and thinking, and then head on my way over to Huffman Peak. The Siouxson summit has been reclaimed with time. The tower is long gone, and only rusted remnants remain. But the story lingers in the wind. Today, only the mountain is on duty. So I think I'm at a
Pretty good place here to start my bushwhack. My original bushwhack area is a little further down the trail, but it looks pretty steep. Since this area was affected by the burn, I don't think it'll be too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and see you guys at the top.
The beginning of the climb was relatively easy. The angle was fairly low, and the burn scar made visualizing the ridgeline above me fairly easy, so I was able to stay on course. But the terrain became slightly steeper, and I was ready for the reprieve of a flat ridgeline. After a short rock scramble, I was able to reach this flat section, which I traversed before soon beginning the final summit pillar to reach the remnants of the old fire tower. This section was the steepest that I had encountered yet, and it culminated in a final rock scramble. As I reached the top, I encountered what was left of the tower. The rocks that once stood as foundation were still left in place, after many, many decades. Amidst the thousands of flies were some of the most stunning views I had seen all trip, including this one of Siouxon Peak. What remained of the tower was scattered about: broken glass, rusted bolts, rotting wood, and even this old telephone receiver. Mount St. Helens loomed close by, dominating the skyline. As a group of vultures circled overhead, I thought about the cycle of life and death that has dominated these slopes. With fire and destruction come new growth. With time, the mountain will reclaim everything, and all signs of what was once there will be gone, but the mountain will always hold on to the memory.